Hey, it's me, Jazzy. Um, let's talk about music. I haven't filmed myself for a while because I was just feeling pretty dysphoric, unfortunately, but I'm here. I did my makeup. That always helps me a lot. Um, yeah, I have talked many times about music and about the fact that I make music, but I think it is so important, especially also in this time of my life where I am transitioning and I am still waiting for medical health care. I just enjoy talking about it. So that's what I'm going to do. I had always been and have always been into music, and particularly electronic music, electronic pop music, like um, a lot of acts and bands that kind of came up in like 2016 when I was on Tumblr and things like that, and the whole subculture surrounding it, and like fandoms and standing and whatever, has really been a big part of me growing up. So there are a lot of artists that I always would look up to that had a very specific um, sonic palette, like a very specific and like recognizable electronic synthy kind of sound. Like I'm talking Crystal Castles, though I don't listen to them anymore. Churches, Purity Ring, Mo, Grimes, obviously. Um, how predictable, but yeah, I always was just so in awe, and their music has always meant a lot to me. So I don't know. I personally I was also making music when I started maybe 10 years ago, but I was mostly at one point really inspired. Wow, can I talk? At one point I just was like, okay, I can do this too. I can do this too. So I had been making music for almost like 10 years, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to sit and hone in on a specific sound and a specific sonic palette for myself. And it took me some time, but I made it work. I figured it out, and this was the first song that I made. It was called My Makeup, that I have also mentioned before. Um, but this is where I kind of figured out the aesthetic of my project, but also the sonics, like the sonic palette. Harsh electronic synthy, but with a kind of cunty, low key spoken word ish type of vocal, maybe kind of whispery also on top. Also, really was into like deadpan kind of delivery and just very like dry, maybe like lower register vocals as well, inspired by Depeche Mode and artists like that. So it all kind of came together. I feel like all my references and inspiration just came together in this first song that I made, in this first couple of songs that I made. And it was around that time that I also was starting to feel more comfortable wearing makeup, and I was also learning myself, or I was also learning how to do makeup on my own face after also just dabbling in it sometimes. But I also, then I was like actually figuring out how to make it work on my own face. So that's what I was doing. And then that's also how I made my first cover art for my first EP. And then at some point, I was like, okay, first four songs were finished. And also, I've also mentioned this before, but it wasn't so much about a narrative. It was more about really the sonic palette and figuring out like my style. Um, so that was released last year. And yeah, that's my first EP. It's 4 tracks. It's electronic music. It's electronic pop music, and it was kind of around this time that I definitely. Um, I think I had already decided to pursue medical transition. Um, but I think I was still figuring out maybe even like where to go with it, like what kind of healthcare providers and everything like that. And I also just only um, had just only changed my name, so it was very fresh. And I will say that the music definitely also helped me explore those parts of myself before I actually started coming out to people. And this is like a notion that I was always interested in because when um, back in the day when I was studying, I was going to uni. I was always also, I was a humanities student, but I was always writing about art, and I was always writing about like the politics of art. And also I remember writing this essay on electronic music and on work by Sophie and the Knife, two very influential electronic artists. I remember writing already about this topic and about how like the medium of electronic music also, not just for me or for them, but for so many people, for so many queer people, can function kind of as like a space in a way, or a safe space to just really explore your sound, but also what you want to sound like. And that means also partly exploring your identity in a way. It's just this fantasy, right? That I was saying, my phone died. As I was saying, it's this fantasy, right? Um, that's also what I experienced. Is also like quite practically, you're able to shift your pitch, you're able to kind of modulate and shift your voice and kind of experiment with registers and things like that. And I'm not a technical person at all when it comes to music, so I don't know much about keys even and things like that. But I did always know, like I always knew that I could express myself in this way. I could express myself through this medium, and that's really why I love it and why I gravitated towards it. And it's also why it's helped me and how it's helped me kind of uncover my own identity. Also, not to mention, obviously, like songwriting and, I mean, there's many benefits to music. I don't think I have to tell you that. Um, but anyway, that's yeah, that's just my 2 cents on the whole medium, on the whole practice. And I will say I'm a very introverted person, and I also love to just really lock in and create something actually tangible. I'll also mention a little bit about my creative process. It really involves not thinking. Like, I usually I will just sit, love sitting. I will just sit, press record, see what comes up. I also made some um, reels about this before, but that's really how I start most of my songs, and it's the same for this EP and for my second one as well. The um, practice was really the same. Usually, and this is what I like about it too, like usually I have like different kind of snippets of expression, if that makes sense. Like I'll just randomly think of like a line or a lyric, and then I'll write it down either physically or in my notes app. Obviously there's lots of notes there. um, and then another day it could be like a melody that just pops up when I'm like going for a walk or something. And then other days I'm really sitting and still not necessarily thinking too much about it, but I'm like deciding to sit and be like, okay, I'm now going to make a beat, and then I kind of refer back to my notes, and then I will try to kind of see how certain lyrics or a text or a line that I had written, how it works on a beat that I then make, and it becomes this kind of really dynamic thing, right? It becomes kind of like this puzzle almost. And I love it so much because it really keeps me so engaged, because it is so expansive, like expansive in that sense. Like there's many elements to it, and I really, really appreciate that. But I guess I'm also really trying to say it's not that I sit and think I'm now going to make a song about this and this subject matter. It's never like that for me, and I really respect and appreciate people who work in that way. I think for me also, because I don't work in that way, it means that my approach is more impulsive and experimental, if you will, and it does take longer to actually finish songs, because for me it really is about the process and it really is about this puzzle. So yeah, that's just really what gets me going. And always when I feel kind of uninspired or like stuck in a rut, I can always refer back to music, either music that I'm making or music that I have made in the past, and I can always um like I always feel proud of it, and I always feel very much just energized from it. So yeah, that's just me appreciating the medium, I guess. And it is definitely something that hasn't hey, it's just something that has always been there. And then sometimes I take a break or I'm not that inspired and I decide to just let things cook for a bit, but I always come back to it. So yeah, um, that's why I love it, and that's why I'm an artist. And I mean, I talked a little bit about my second EP. Again, the process was really similar. It was the difference with the first one was that it was just more concrete. Also, as my transition kind of progressed slowly but surely with every step, certain things personally became clear. So I also was then able to be a little bit more clear in the lyrics in my second for my second EP. Um, but I think the premise was very much the same, and I think kind of the initial like beats and the initial kind of songs, they kind of like, or the seeds for them kind of were, how do you say, they were kind of planted around the same time. So I really do consider them like kind of siblings in a way. So yeah, that's me. Not so much necessarily about transition, but definitely it's a tool that has really, I hope that that's clear now. It's something that has really helped me. And I think that that's also really the like a good thing, and like what's beautiful and really nice about being an artist is that there's always like an outlet. I think it also ties into my sobriety as well, because I think even though transition is something that's not always easy, I feel I'm always able to like kind of also ride the highs, but also mostly like ride the lows of the whole trajectory and the process, because I like at least partly because I have this kind of outlet for my feelings, and in a way it has also served as a um, distraction, as in maybe some days I might be a little bit dysphoric about my voice, for example, even though it's fine usually. But then there's always music where I can kind of, you know, express myself and then kind of shift the pitch, for example, and just things like that. That's just an example, but yeah, I think that's how the two are kind of connected. That's an example of how the two things are connected, and also why there's such a connection between queerness and music, electronic music. And like I was saying, I have always found that very interesting. Um, there's a lot of things to say about this topic, but I thought I would just share my experience and talk a little bit more in depth about my inspiration and about my process. So that's what I've done. I will probably also make another video, maybe in a similar vein, but where I talk about my album, because I also made an album last year. And obviously I'm still working on new music. I'm always working on new music, which I'm really excited about. Honestly, I'm obsessed, and it's nice to be so passionate about this. So yeah, stay tuned. And if you wanna check out my EPs, or my album, I will link it below, and you can listen to it or share it. Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye bye.